I'm Esha Dutta, Honorary Convenor of Northeast Affairs and the Eshaas Women of Kolkata. And I'm delighted to have you all with us for this very special occasion of Authors Afternoon, Aparna Banerjee Foundation's cherished literary gathering. Our guest for this evening is author Mukul Kumar. We are all looking forward and excited to hear from him, but before that, a few words about the foundation. The Prabhakatan Foundation is dedicated to promoting literature, education, the performing arts, culture, gender equality and women's empowerment through a diverse range of initiatives, spanning author interactions, book launches, literary festivals, panel discussions, intimate cultural gatherings, and captivating performances in music, dance, and theatre. The Foundation celebrates and nurtures each creative expression. Now it's my turn to introduce our guest author for this evening, Mukul Kumar. Mukul Kumar is a civil servant, novelist, and poet. A civil servant from the 1997 batch of the Indian Railway Traffic Service, he is currently serving in the Railway Board under the Ministry of Railways. Mukul has made a foray into Hindi writing as well by translating his debut English fiction, As Boys Become Men. It has been published as Honorary. Mukul is a regular voice at leading literary platforms and media across India. His literary and public service contribution have earned him multiple accolades like the National Award for Outstanding Service to Indian Railways, Bharat Nirman Award for Literary Excellence, Srijan Shikhar Puraskar by Nandi Sevanyas for his Hindi novel Arohi, Purvanchal Gaurav Samman for his impact as both a bureaucrat and a writer. In conversation today with the author is Sanjukta Dasgupta. Sanjukta Dasgupta is an academic, poet, short story writer, critic, editor and translator with a distinguished career spanning teaching, research and literary scholarship. A former professor and head of the Department of English and the Dean of the Faculty of Arts at Calcutta University, she has been associated with several prestigious international fellowships and has taught and lectured extensively across India and abroad. Deeply engaged with Tagore studies, translation, and intercultural literary discourse, she continues to contribute significantly to the fields of literature, education, and cultural studies. She has also served as a convener of the English Language Board of the Sahitya Academy, Ministry of Culture, and was a member of the Academy's General Council. Her acclaimed poetry collection, Sita's Sisters, Indomitable Draupadi, and Eklavya Speaks, were recently shortlisted for the Sahitya Academy National Award. We are truly honored to have you both here with us this evening. So without taking much time, over to you. Please.
Hello everyone, good evening, and it's just wonderful to be here, invited by the Prabhakatan Foundation, with whom I have worked quite closely of late. In fact, they also supported a visit last year to the Belfast Literary Conference in Ireland, where I spoke about Irish and Bengali writers. It was a fantastic opportunity for me because there are so many commonalities between the Irish literatures and, of course, the Bengali colonial writers of a particular time. But today we are here to listen about, from Mukul Kumar, about a book which is really extraordinary. Because I'm familiar with Mukul's poetry. In fact, I think I wrote a foreword of, So I thought Mukul is really transgressing into my area of feminist studies. What is this? And I thought, is it poetry? And then the book arrives and I find this is fantastic scholarship that I noticed in this book, and yet not dense at all, not unreadable. Generally what happens is, if a book looks like this, very serious, very well structured, and the prose is something that which moves from page to page and is divided into sections. You say, "Nah, this is too much. Is this there a video of this book?" So that's the way we think nowadays. But this is such a free-flowing use of language in this book that I was absolutely engrossed and captivated, and probably the reason why it is so free-flowing is that it is coming from a creative writer. So critical writing from a creative writer, I think, gives a sort of a sensitivity about language, and also, but you know, he's not joking and making very silly, trite, trivial comments at all in the book, because it is not about anything creative, fantastic, absurd. It is absolute scholarship. And this scholarship, he has immersed himself so well into the 10 chapters of this book. This immersion is absolutely remarkable, and he calls it Women in the Womb of Time. So, if womb always suggests entrapment, yes, you are caught within a space, and there is always a desire to break free. You do not perpetually want to spend your life in a womb. It is that you break free from the womb. So from the darkness into the light, almost Upanishadik title like this, yes? So, womb of time, unveiling. So he uses two images. One is womb, and then unveiling ancient feminism. Not the feminists of the present, of the contemporary times, but ancient, absolutely pre-modern, and he goes back to the myths, to the epics, and he is so good in attracting his readers by enabling them to follow him in the journey. He's the leader. The way in which he introduces it, it's not anything about a fictional odyssey. It is almost pedagogic. It is like a teacher whom you like. Generally, teachers are something the less said about. Yeah? So, but this one teacher, I don't know how did you go to the railways instead of joining the university. You would have been quite a challenge for us. But then, today we do not have time to talk about the bullet train, which probably you can end with. So, because he's in the railways, and so he can easily tell us about all the experiments that are going on there. But here also he takes us on a journey back in time, but a journey not confined to the past. A journey which is relatable and relevant to the present. That is a journey which spans the past, the present, and the future. And in order to introduce him, the first section of his introduction, where he writes, can I read it?
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
However, the scope of this study, he says, he's not confining himself to ancient feminism. Yes? So the scope of this study extends beyond the classical interpretation of feminism. The focused articulation of gender inequalities, propagation of awareness, and targeted actions to achieve gender equality through policies and laws. This study embraces and examines exemplary instances of women who long confined within overpowering male domains, the womb, courageously broke free, unwilling, from gendered fetters and fastenings to exercise remarkable autonomy and agency. So you can get a drift of what the book is about from this short introductory paragraph. And there, Mukul, first of all, I would like to just ask you, that from creative writing to critical writing, this transition, this diversification of your writing skills, was it difficult or it came to you naturally?
Thank you, ma'am, for introducing the book in such a humbling manner. I must say, wonderful it was. And at the outset, I extend my heartfelt thanks to Prabha Ketan Foundation for giving me this prestigious platform to talk about my book and, of course, my literary journey in general also. Coming to your question, ma'am, how difficult it was to switch from fiction and poetry to this non-fiction. So I would like to define the journey of this book with two terms. First is serendipity, and second is epiphany or intuition, whatever you can say. Serendipity means something occurring in the present, culminating into absolutely unexpected in the future, which is absolutely present and fulfilling. So that takes me back to 2017 and 18 when I participated in a program that was called Advanced Program for Public Administration. And it was a government-sponsored program. I had taken 10 months break and I had participated in that. That curriculum demanded writing a dissertation on some theme of social sciences. And gender studies was, of course, one of the options, one of the themes to write the dissertation on. So I chose this subject with this specific, the hypothesis. Coming to the hypothesis of this book, I think I will leave it to the later part of the conversation. But first, serendipity. How serendipity? Then, of course, I was into my other works. I was writing another fiction. I was into non-fiction on the railways also. It never occurred to me then that I would be developing this into a non-fiction book. So that is how it was. And one epiphany, one fine morning in the wee hours, suddenly I literally felt palpably, somebody nudging me and waking me up and telling me, you have got such a beautiful, creative conception and structure on hand. Why don't you, develop that into a book? So I think this illustrates the glorious uncertainties of life, that sudden turns and subtle hints that make life really beautiful. So that is how it was. But of course, now coming to the difficulty part, when I switched from poetry to fiction also appeared to be pretty difficult because it is obviously self-evidently much more demanding in terms of time and energy. But the real distinction between fiction, non-fiction and the rest of the universe assumed articulation in my mind when I really took to writing this book. Fiction also involves quite some knowledge, quite some wisdom. But that is the knowledge and the information, knowledge and the wisdom that one acquires in the natural course of living. Predominantly, I say. Of course, it involves some reading. But non-fiction is altogether different ballgame. Hardcore research, you have to be concentrating on facts, and the role play of imagination is limited. So I think for a fiction writer, for a poet, to do that was pretty challenging. And I must say there were painful moments. It was quite a painstaking experience. But then in life, what happens at times, that goal powers your journey on. It pushes you on through the difficulties and the challenges. And the goal was what? I was driven by the idea of diversifying myself as a writer, from a poet to a fiction writer to non-fiction. So that appeared to be pretty a fascinating goal, and that is how it was, ma'am.
You've done a fantastic job from diversification, I must say. And though I've spoken about the title, would you like to comment further a little on your choice of title?
I think you have already explained it, illustrated it, like the womb of time. Womb of time, depicts something far back in history, something ancient that is not, that is waiting to be discovered, that is undiscovered. So womb of time, gives you that, conveys that, sense. And that is how the subtitle is Unveiling Ancient Feminism. I am here, I am searching for all the indigenous strands of feminism across the entire segment of ancient literature. That is again immensely satisfying because why I chose this subject, because it's not that we have not heard or I hadn't heard of ancient feminism earlier, but the discourse was very limited. It was limited to how women enjoyed greater amount of freedom and opportunities during the Vedic times. And then Vara Mihra, we talked of Vara Mihra, how he was hailed as the feminist of the ancient time. And then of course the recent trend was the religious mythology, where we were trying to reinvent or re-examine our own epics, certain characters like Draupadi and Sita. So the entire discourse appeared to be quite limited. It was not very historically rich and materially grounded. So I thought that ancient Indian literature, being such a huge reservoir of knowledge and wisdom, hasn't been tapped optimally. So that brought me to the hypothesis of this study. This is the hypothesis, why I chose. And then of course the exploration of the text, we will come to that later, like Dharma Shastra, Manu Smriti and Vedas and epics, as I say, had been, I think, examined from the feminist perspective, but there were certain other texts about which we will talk later. They were really the match winners, I must say.
As I mentioned when I was making those introductory remarks, that there are 10 chapters to this book, very well structured, and the very first chapter deals with the women in the Rig Veda, which includes Gargi, Maitreyi, Lopamudra, favorite names for Bengali parents to impose on their kids who have no choice but to carry it as a crutch throughout their lives and try to behave accordingly, which is an impossibility mostly. But what is remarkable about the Rig Vedas is that these women had tremendous liberty and were encouraged to be intellectuals who could engage in argumentative discourse with male scholars. And it seems in the later chapters, as we read on, that somehow instead of evolving progressively, there is a regressive movement. Instead of evolving progressively, we are moving back as the centuries are progressing. Now this is something very, very remarkable, which Mukul has pointed out in his book. And so I would like him to comment on this women losing their freedom and right to education after the period of the Rig Veda. This is very, very disturbing. This is what we had to fight through in the 19th century, 20th century, early 20th century, yes? So how did this happen? Would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, ma'am. I think I just brought out how women enjoy greater amount of freedom, greater amount of greater opportunity for education and autonomy, lot of autonomy in marriage also during the Rig Vedic times, and even they enjoyed inheritance right, property rights also. So I think, and after that, I think there was a marked deterioration. But I will serve a caveat here that marked deterioration isn't as black as has been portrayed in the text like Dharma Shastras and you can say later Smriti literature. And that is exactly this book is doing, because we have to understand first that these entire ancient texts are basically prescriptive in nature. What should be according to certain minds who have created those texts. They don't reflect completely the lived reality and the experiences at the ground level. So that is what a scholar, that is what a student, I can say, or any academic, with that I think approach, with that particular curiosity in the mind, you have to approach these texts. There was marked deterioration, of course, there is no denying. But when you examine the text and supplement it with the other non-literary sources, like I have done in this book, what you come out with is the conclusion, is the inference that the black is certainly not that black, it is grey. Those new facts, those new perspectives brighten the black into grey. So that is what I am doing here, and it can be brighter with more facts coming out, with more discoveries that are waiting to be done. So that is how it is, and of course, gradually how the sense of deterioration was amplified by certain with certain strategy in the mind, we are anyway coming to Manusmriti, then I will tell how during the colonial regime Manusmriti was translated by William Jones in the 18th century. And there was a particular colonial objective behind that. We will come to that when we talk about Manusmriti. So Manusmriti is one text which, when I examined all the text, I realized it is certainly one of the, but it is the text that paints women in not a very bright light, I must say. That sense of subjugation and subordination is definitely there. And at least I can say, I can safely draw this conclusion: this is more restrictive, this is more regressive than rest of the text, but not, let me tell you, not as regressive and as restrictive as it has been projected out to be. Like there is certain shloka in the Manusmriti that says that how a woman is dependent upon father during the childhood and upon husband during the youth and upon son. This is a very regressive statement that is immediately conveys that sense of subjugation and dependence. But immediately in some other shloka, Manusmriti says where a woman's dignity is not honored, where the women's doesn't command any respect in the household, prosperity can never come. So these texts. Another very remarkable fact with these texts is there several, it is replete with contradictions, and now you have to use those facts in order to serve the objective with which you are approaching. Like, I wanted to amplify the modern feminist discourse with this ancient facts and these new perspectives. But that is the beauty, that is what revisionist mythology is doing. Like, we are tapping this with the conscious objective of bettering the human society.
Thank you. And of all the non-literary texts that you went for, he first went for Manusmriti. Can you imagine what the feminists would feel about all this? So are you a humanist or a feminist? Because most women writers would always say, I am a humanist, but definitely not a feminist. So are you also that category, or would you think that gender equality is the prime target of women, and if that makes them a feminist, they should be brave enough to say that? And where we are thinking of Tagore and Amartya Sen. If you know about his book, Identity and Violence, he introduces himself as a feminist. So, what would you do, Mukul? There are too many women here anyway.
Ma'am, this I feel not only from my heart, from my soul, that ultimately feminism is the offspring of humanism. The moment you talk about equality, the moment you talk about dignity, the moment you talk about individual dignity and respect, I think these are the eternal. You are talking of the eternal human values. You are talking about empathy, you are talking about compassion. You have to go a little deeper and see what is the groundswell of this feminism. And I have done that. I have sincerely tried to understand the entire historical and civilizational context of gender discrimination. I think it is a very interesting discourse. So feminism, I do believe that feminism, narrow term. The broader term is humanism, and when you say, are you a feminist? I am a feminist only to the extent that I am a humanist, but again a caveat from my side, I can't say, because I am a humanist. Before that I will say I am a writer, because humanist conveys a sense of activism, a sense of conscious advocacy of some cause. I am not doing that here. So a writer, I am reminded of a quote where it is said that a writer is a psychologist, a writer is a philosopher, a writer is a social scientist, a writer is everyone, and a writer is none. That is the beauty, because writer explores the universal human experience. So what human experience tends to grip his imagination or arouse his curiosity completely, it is a matter of time and destiny and your own sensibility. So that is how it was. Like, I really can't explain very objectively why I chose the gender study, but of course that has got a lot to do with my academic upbringing. I have studied history in Delhi University, and for any sensitive individual running, living in the current time, I think is bound to be impacted by, is bound to be influenced by such a strong social phenomena. And my upbringing of history, of course, I think subconsciously it might have worked in my choice of this subject for writing a dissertation.
Thank you, Mukul. And you have a great future in diplomacy also. You have been able to link being a humanist and being a feminist. So, really, very good, well appreciated. And that is precisely what all of us try to believe in terms of, I think all of us started with being humanists and believed in humanism, and when we found that what humanism is doing to us, then we switched to feminism. Yes, but of course it is all about gender equality. Yes, there has to be gender balance, there has to be gender equality. We cannot think in terms of gender bashing, that is male bashing or female bashing. Masculinism, the way it is understood, masculinism is not about brawn and 8-pack and 6-pack abs and things like that. Yes, it's much more difficult because masculinism is something that really entraps men, because then they are taught to be a man, not to cry, not to express. So there is repression. But we will not go into masculinism right now till you write your next book. So the epics that you have referred to, would you like to just talk about any of these epic heroines, as we call them, like Sita or Draupadi and Kaikeyi and Kunti? There are a number of them. So if you very briefly talk about them, and then we will go to the non-fiction within the time given to us. Okay?
Yeah. So you have already named certain important characters, and definitely I started my discourse by bringing out how Sita and Draupadi remain, and Ahilya. These are the characters which are being re-examined and they are being reinterpreted through a different lens. So, but when I started, exploring this ancient literature, I came across many certain lesser-known characters and many popular characters that are waiting, to be discovered with much, greater depth. And one such character which really, I think, fascinated. All of us have heard of that character, but we don't appreciate the enormity and the autonomy. Enormity of the autonomy and agency that character came to exercise. That was Savitri. I will now narrate the story. Okay, like all of us know how Savitri was able to snatch, Satyavan from the jaws of death, from the jaws of Yama, and there is a very interesting, dialogue between them, and how she outwits Yama. Yama says, death, once, death has engulfed a person, there is no way, when I am bound by the laws of nature, I can't reverse it. Then how she outwits, like she, he is so impressed, so touched by the piety and the devotion of Savitri that he asked her to seek 3 boons from him. And one of the boons was like, I want to have many children. Yama, in a flow, I think he ends up granting that boon, and later on he realizes that, okay, what have I done? Because those were the times when you were not supposed to, have sons and daughters beyond marriage. So I think she outwitted, so that shows her intellect, that shows her intelligence. One, that is not the end of the story. Now the greater part of it, which really fascinated me, gripped my imagination, and really exhilarated me, was his, her father-in-law was lying in shambles. He was lying all defeated in a corner because he had lost his state to some, I think in some war. That was another boon she, sought from him, that entire state should be restored. So Savitri not only, emerges as a character who is very, you can say, intelligent, who is very knowledgeable, who is very devoted to her husband, but she appears, she emerges as the matriarch of the entire family. She rescued her husband, she rescues her father-in-law, and ultimately entire family is re-established. So that character of Savitri, really, the way it unfolded, that really fascinated me, as a writer. Then there are certain many other characters, ma'am. Like I have explored Supernakha also, ma'am. Supernakha is supposed to be a, villainous, character. Ravana's sister. But then you shift the lens, and those were the times when she openly expresses her attraction for Rama, and then Lakshmana. She knew these two are the extraordinary men, and who really that caught her fancy. So it was quite natural for a woman to get attracted, and her sin was to express her desire, which is not a sin. It was being viewed as a sin. Okay, you spurned the advance of a woman, but you can't condemn that woman for doing that. So I think Supernakha is another very interesting character. Like that, now many characters, where the Sita also I explored, but Sita has been, I think, quite amply explored. Draupadi also quite explored with quite some depth. So I think these two characters for this session we can.
Yeah, fascinating. Yes, all the time that you get compared to Sita. Of course, Sita's last act was a feminist act. Yes, she rejected everything and absolutely went into her mother's. So the womb again, return to the womb, you could say. Yes. So that was rebellion, Sita. Yes. Similarly, Shakuntala, again another rebellion, and now these camouflaged rebel women will move away from that and go to a text not Manusmriti. Yes, we have had enough of that. And you yourself said it's quite negative, which was rather pleasing to hear. And so from that, let us go to a text which we will really never read. It's called the Arthashastra. Yes, it is about economics, Kautilya's Arthashastra. Now, I would just like to read out a few comments by Mukul here, and it was an eye-opener. It's a fascinating text from the way you have written it, and these are the few lines from his chapter on Arthashastra. Another important aspect discussed in the Arthashastra is protecting women in the workplace. Me too. Yes. Seeing that, I really had to sit up. The protection of women slaves at the workplace is significant in addressing the safety of women slaves. Yes? Women slaves, modern slavery, as you know, is also equally exploitative and oppressive. And it is fascinating that you should write about this. And also he talks about prostitution, Ganika, and he is really equating it with sex work and sex workers rather than being women who are being victimized. Rather, giving the women some agency that if you want to forcibly utilize my body for sexual gratification, then you have to pay for it. So I can't imagine, Kautilya was quite a smart guy. Yes. So I'm very liberated for his times. Yes. I think he would do well in Harvard. All right. So would you like to comment on this?
Yeah. As I told you, like these two texts, Arthashastra and Kama Sutra, I think emerged to be the most enlightening text in terms of like ancient feminism. Why, I will tell you, because I was mentally prepared. Epics, Vedas, Upanishad, Dharmashastra, Smriti, all such texts have been, I think, explored with lesser or I think greater depth. But Arthashastra has always been identified with a text on statecraft and polity, and Kama Sutra has been identified with a text, has hailed to be a text on sexuality. Arthashastra, let me tell you, it most brilliantly, if any text resonates with modern, feminism, discourse on modern feminism, it is Arthashastra. I will illustrate with a couple of very concrete examples. One of the examples ma'am gave, कि protecting women in the work sphere. And then it talks of the graded punishment against the sexual crimes against women. We are still grappling not only with sexual crime, we are still debating over the punishment for those sexual crimes. Just recently, I think we keep the debate keep emerging, like what should be the punishment for rape. Arthashastra has already there in Arthashastra. It is already there, death punishment for physically assaulting a woman. So before that, let me just bring out what Arthashastra really as a text is. It is basically what Kautilya is doing in Arthashastra. He is trying to strengthen state, and his approach towards various strata of society is purely utilitarian. So women, he just viewed women as another segment of human resource, and he wanted to tap. Ultimately, what it did, it ended up gifting, women greater freedom, the opportunity to move out the domestic sphere. That is what he was doing. But ultimately, that is why he says, a state that is unable to protect women will not be able to command the respect from the public at large. So he wanted to protect whatever may be the objective, but ultimately he upheld justice and equality for women in different walks of life. He promoted women in the weaving industry, and in order to protect women from the workplace harassment, he came out with a particular design that a woman, when she was supposed to hand over the yarns which she spun to the market, then it was supposed to be, the transaction was supposed to be taking place in the dim light, in the night, moving out and dimming the light. So all such, and plus punishment also, of course, if there is any instance, punishment state immediately intervene. We are still, I think, feminist governance is coming out with all such policies and law that is trying to uplift the status of women. We are talking about like women empowerment, and the state is playing a very crucial role. Reservation, for women, free education for women, incentivizing women in different walks of life. So Arthashastra emerges to be really the most thrilling part of, along with Kama Sutra, most thrilling text as regards examination of the ancient literature. And one more fact, like modern feminist discourse is quite pluralistic and diversified, because we are talking about intersection of gender with caste. Arthashastra also reveals that. How? I will tell you. Like when women were promoted to participate in the weaving industry, women of the higher caste, by the demands of purity and chastity, were restricted from moving out, and women of the lower caste. So here, intersectionality between gender and caste is playing out in an altogether contrarian manner. And Kama Sutra, let me tell you, another text that illustrates intersectionality between gender and caste in totally contrasting way, where women, household women, homemakers, what we call today, they exercise greater amount of, freedom, greater amount of control over the household, economy. And again, there was a differentiation. Higher caste women enjoy greater amount of freedom, lower caste. So these two texts are really brilliant. You have to really go deep into that. I think this time is very short for me to, completely, present these two texts in its wide ramifications and manifestations.
Yes, Mukul, in fact, there are two books there. One on Arthashastra and women, and the other is Kama Sutra. Because in Kama Sutra, the women as a desiring subject rather than a desirable object, that is prioritized. So a woman as a desiring subject means granting a woman agency to desire and express her desire for a male. It is all about heterosexuality throughout. Yes, there are very few references to the non-binary. But in terms of compulsory heterosexuality, what we notice in these texts, so brilliantly analyzed by Mukul, is the fact that women as desiring subjects, and then he, because of paucity of time, I have to bring you to the final chapter where he talks about the archaeological evidences available, the material culture, and also the epigraphic, as you call it, and the numismatics. That is, on coins, the images of women. And therefore, to just say that women were absolutely pushed to the margins and they did not have an identity, recognition, visibility, voice, is what Mukul tries to contradict in his reading of ancient feminism. So, am I right or wrong? You don't have to say I'm right because I'm retired now. I won't lose my job.
You are absolutely, ma'am. You're hitting at the cracks. That was the basic idea behind exploring these epigraphs and coins and numismatic sources. Because as a student of history, I had that sense. Literary text as a source of history is always different from non-literary sources. What non-literary sources I think serve you, how they serve you better, like as I think I brought out at the beginning itself, that they better reflect the ground realities and the lived experiences. Those coins depict certain, certain glimpses of everyday life.
Pictures of coins.
Yeah, so that better, reveal what actually, how women lived, how women were treated, and how even they were celebrated. So, I can illustrate it again with a couple of epigraphs which are there, which I have explored, which I have studied. One of the epigraphs, of the Gupta times. Gupta times mean the times of when Kama Sutra was compiled. We are talking about 3rd, 4th century AD. So those were the times when I think there is a strong impression, and it was true also. If you go strictly by text, there was a marked deterioration in the status of women over time, as ma'am rightly told, especially when we compare those times with the Rigvedic time. But what these epigraphs and coins reveal is that, like I told you, it was not that bad. There are epigraphs which reveal women dancing and playing in the park. Then another epigraph reveals a queen of Satvahana era Nagarnika performing Ashwamedh as a widow. So she inherited the empire, number one, but performing Ashwamedh was supposed to be the preserve and privilege of male kings only. So she performed that, and you don't know what sort of resistance she might have faced during those times. She overcame that resistance, and she was able to do that. Another epigraph reveals quite a few women together, and they are making some handsome donation to the temple. So from temple there was no interference by any male authority there. All these women exercising their autonomy and agency there. So these sources better reflect the realities, and they complete the study. They complete the study by tempering the negative impression which is conveyed by the text. Because texts, as I told you, they are prescriptive in nature basically. They don't reflect, I have explored heterodox literature also, Buddhist and Jainist literature. That was another, I think, absolutely thrilling exploration in the sense very different perspective, very different ideas emerged from those heterodox literature texts also. Yeah.
Yes, he did refer to both texts in Jainism and Buddhism, especially Therigatha, which is a 6th century BC series of poems written by Buddhist female missionaries. And if you thought that missionaries were liberated, these women were saying, oh, I can't stand it. And so it's the same story everywhere. 6th century BC and 2026. Not much difference. Yes, it's getting worse maybe. If you look at the first pages of newspapers every day, the atrocities on the bodies of women. Bodies of women. A woman doesn't get murdered because she's a content creator. A new phrase I've learned. Because she's a content creator or a PhD degree holder. Yes, it's just because of her biological sex that she is absolutely oppressed and sexually assaulted and even murdered. But I would like to conclude this by
I would like
reading.
to add, ma'am, something here.
Yeah.
When we are talking about these texts. These texts are not only prescriptive in nature, they don't represent the entire geographical area also. There were very drastic variations. Like when I was exploring Buddhist literature, then I could see how the area, the Bihar and Bengal, revealed certain different realities. Women were impacted by Buddhism, and they joined the monasteries. And when they join monasteries and nuns, we view it as a very simple fact, but you have to go deeper and appreciate what amount of resistance that these women must have faced in order to seek that spiritual path. These women became spiritual seekers, abandoning their domestic life. So it was absolutely remarkable, and in concurrent to those Buddhist times where the Dharma Shastras and Smriti, which were painting women in a very restrictive light. So that is how it was. Like these texts, we should examine with this particular thought in the mind, objective in the mind. Okay, these texts don't represent the entire geographical area. There are various local traditions, various cultural traditions. I will tell you, when this book was launched by IGNCA, Soral Mansingh ji had come. And she told me, I'm really impressed by the range of ancient literature you have examined. But again, she came out with this key, why haven't you examined tribal societies? I think they formed a considerable geographical area. That gives me another idea. For altogether examining tribal society. But ma'am, you must have seen in the first chapter, I have written, I was very conscious, not that I was completely oblivious of that, exploring tribal society, but I have already written at the outset that matriarchal societies prevailing in the tribal area, notwithstanding that thing I have already revealed at the beginning. So that makes it clear to the readers that tribal societies have been excluded from the scope of this study.
Yeah, but tribal societies, even you have to give me 1 minute about this, because for my little understanding of what we have studied in terms of tribals, I wouldn't call them tribal societies, but matriarchal societies is one where women work hardest. They do not own property. And thirdly, in the matriarchal society, it is the men who are always singing and getting drunk. In the patriarchal society, have you ever noticed a woman singing and getting drunk? Even at daytime, let alone at night?
Power comes at a cost.
Yeah, so it is, you cannot even think in terms of those parallels. So the way Mukul winds up this fascinating narrative, and I'm sure all of us can learn a lot from these, because ancient feminism and ancient feminine representations is something that we only know in a very cliched, essentialist way. But these are very informed discourse that we will be able to really engage with if you happen to read these chapters, and as I said, in free-flowing prose. So he writes, hence these diverse sources, inscriptions, coins, texts and visual arts, together build a strong picture of ancient Indian women as guardians and actors of Vedic ritualistic practice. And he winds up by stating, to summarize, inscriptions and coins are unequivocal evidence that women were not passive onlookers, but dynamic sovereigns and rulers in ancient Indian history. These accounts support feminist interpretations of Indian history, presenting a critical range of gender and power. and he has got at least 25 pages of bibliography that he has attached, and it's very tough. He has really covered a wide range, and there you have Wendy Doniger. You have referred to Wendy a number of times, and also the most dominant feminist writers and critics and theorists, even Simone de Beauvoir, Judith Butler, all of them. In fact, the bibliography is tougher than the book. So
historiography is also a part of
yeah,
the book.
and it is absolutely a historiographic approach. And you know, the difference between being a historian is to look at factual accounts, but a historiographer has this advantage of commenting on what the historical facts represent. Don't think it's all my voice studies, it's AI that I picked it up from. I checked before I would really commit myself to this, with a historian sitting next to me. So I am delighted to have been invited by Prabhakaritan Foundation and Anindita for this wonderful session, and I have learnt a lot from this book. Congratulations.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you a lot, and thank you for speaking.
Now I would invite some questions, about 2 or 3 in the next 10 minutes that we have.
This is the lady SDG, Sanjukta Dasgupta. This is the lady who taught us gender. And when we told her, ma'am, you rock, she said, don't say it so loudly, I'll rock the boat. So, these are things we remember. So, congratulations. A very humble submission. My guru is right there. And she is the source of all that I know about gender. And today, I teach at an undergraduate college. So, her legacy somewhere I try to share. You have spoken exhaustively, written rather, exhaustively about the Vedic era and the studies of the Vedic, or the pre-modern, as ma'am said. The women are shown very emancipated, very progressive. But when it comes down to discourse in the contemporary era, where exactly did this, or how exactly did this stereotype that all of us has been perpetuated to all of us of the woman as victim or the woman as subaltern, where exactly did the original or the facts deviate into stereotypes? This is just my question.
Deviated
from this potent manifestation of women, this powerful independent manifestation of women, to the stereotype that is perpetuated in the name of women as victims, etc. How do you think that came about? And thank you so much for this scholarship.
Thank you. Women as a stereotype, like I have, I would like to bring out how I have set up the historical and civilizational context of gender discrimination. I would just, in a very brief manner, I would, present it. First scholar is Simone de Beauvoir. She talks of second sex, like she has a book written on seven sex.
Yes.
So, the exploration of this gender discrimination took me back to the times of the genesis of, human civilization, when we were hunter-gatherers. And by way of the superior physical strength, it fell upon male to venture into the mountain and forest and kill animals and bring that animal to the shelter where the women baked the meat, and that is how they survived. Simone de Beauvoir explains this dichotomy with 2 terms: transcendence and immanence. The labor performed by man, like overcoming the vicissitudes of nature, annexing environment, creating tools and weapons, killing animals. So the labor performed by man was external to biology. That is why she called it transcendental. He is transcending his biology. Women, by the demands of maternity, remained in the shelter, and whatever duties she performed, raising and breeding children, at best she was baking meat. So she was doing everything. Her labor was completely tied to her biology, and she explains that in terms of immanence, with this term immanence. Second comes this concept of emergence of family and private property by angels. This concept. How when we graduated from that to that era, that nomadic era, to agriculture era, and how farming became the main means of survival. Then farming implied territorial expansion, and then private property came. This is my farm. So it was the anxiety of man to ensure that his acquisition, his property is passed on to his progeny only. He wanted to be sure about the purity of the progeny, and the sexual freedom of women started getting restricted. Okay, so that that was the second thing. Third thing, again, this has been explained by Judith Butler with the term gender performativity. That what a woman is going to do is decided by her birth. And then, of course, Lice Vogel, a brilliant scholar who views it through the Marxist lens, she talks that the man's labor carries the surplus value, but that surplus value comes from the labor performed by women. And the entire Marxian concept of historical materialism is based on this concept of silver value. I have extended this discourse as a writer. It was I think I had never come across the ownership of the means of production gives you a higher status.
Yes.
That is what communism has been about. Whosoever owns the means of production, then the capitalist and bourgeoisie dichotomy comes there. That is what has happened to women, stereotyping. So that is how stereotyping has been done, and that is perpetuating over time, irrespective of the women enjoying greater amount of freedom. Now also you can say gradually, I think we are approaching towards the Rig Vedic era.
Returning.
But returning. But the task is far from the finish. You are still fighting this battle, but the headway has definitely been made. I think it is a battle which is being. I think we are gaining the ground, but a lot more remains to be done. That is how it is. So that stereotyping you have to understand the entire historical context. So I think, but we are breaking the stereotype in many ways. You can say we are breaking those stereotypes also.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mukul, for that very, very exhaustive. Okay. Oh, didn't you have a question?
You have? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Well, first of all, congratulations, Mukul. I see that in and out of railways, in and out of poetry, prose, fiction, non-fiction, he remains on track. And great to listen to you as well. I must comment that if Mother's memory serves me right, Simone de Beauvoir has come up twice, and Prabha Khetan's inspiration was Simone de Beauvoir, so it's actually quite appropriate.
Okay,
That,
that's great. So that is, I think, something that is an exhilarating knowledge for me.
And imagine a feminist, Marxist, existentialist.
Yeah.
I think blasphemous at this time.
That was the first book that I really read with all sincerity before embarking on this journey. I must say. But this, between that dissertation and this book, there has been quite some labor and a timeline of almost 3 years of hard work. But Simone de Beauvoir, I could read right at the beginning. So the creative conception was already done, way back. And now with more facts and historiography, I have built that into a book.
So the question I had in mind is, of course, this is a fabulous scholarly work where you've obviously, presented the trajectory, as it were, right? Say from Rigvedic times till very recent. I mean, not very recent, but at least till modern enough times. Now, suppose you were to stretch your lens, say 100, 200 years. I'm asking you to do some crystal ball gazing. Suppose we are in 226, let's say 100, 200 years. The problem with studying women at any point of time, say for example now, is you'll have all fantastic stories of women being heads of state, women flying rockets into outer space, women being astronauts, women having the freedom to have a domestic sort of life or not, be working, be not working, earning, not, all kinds. And yet there will be the atrocities, there will be, terrible, indigestible bad news that keeps coming in and is breaking news. The point being that at no point of time can the comment or the commentary on women and their growth, their evolution, their arrival, can it ever really be all good, all bad? Because even if somebody studies our times today, the times that we are in today, you'll find these glorious chapters that all of us are scripting as women. And yet, parallelly, they're equally dark, almost chapters and alleyways that you simply can't mention. So how does therefore one really study a stretch of time for women? Because they are always the darkest and the brightest that seem to coexist all the time together.
That brings me to a very different example.
Yeah.
Partition of India, 1947. We are still grappling with that. What we are is, 50 years, what happened just almost 75 years back. So that is waiting to be resolved, that it not resolved. Like India, Pakistan, and also problems are there. Communalism is of course. What happened 75 years back had not been resolved. And thousands of years back, like I just presented the context, historical and civilizational context of the discrimination. Those stereotypes have emerged from the way we started living. So you have to bear that in mind when you want that we should head into the times when this debate is over. Feminism has lost its element. It is no more a subject. That is what I could understand from your question. When still things are black, but we have gained some ground. I think you will have to accept. And when I wrote this book, I didn't brought out certain instances of exemplary women who have been inspiring for others by way of exercising autonomy and agency while remain trapped, in the patriarchal framework. But as Maya Angelou says, empowered women empower women. Like you don't know in what ways it is going to ignite confidence in the countless other, women. Yes, that is exact, and that is happening. And at the deeper level, let me go. From this book, of course, in a very covert manner, it will emerge. But I will tell you, feminism, if you have to really, understand feminism, feel feminism palpably, I think you have to appreciate the daily power struggle that a woman is negotiating within the domestic confines. And that battle is being fought with a greater amount of aggression, confidence, and courage. And that is how I think marriages are coming under pressures. You will have to accept this reality. The moment you talk about equality and institutions, like marriage is bound to come under pressure. So you have to, I think, have a very broad and deep, view in order to understand how feminism is playing out and how really, I think, how much ground we have already made. How is that it has really made a difference to the human the human society. And then of course feminist governance, state is also intervening, like the state intervened during Arthashastra times. Like we are coming out with positive policies for positive discrimination. It started with reservation and all, and now for Dalits and scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So, like there is a conscious approach from the governance of from the government also to upgrade the women. So it is a very joint venture, you can say, like a change in the people also, and then state intervention also. And I can see things changing, and all such questions during exploring it, these questions were haunting me also. But what lies in the genesis of human existence will not be resolved so soon. So I think it is a journey. There are many more battles that we are still fighting, and God knows when those, but the journey should remain on. I think that journey should remain on. Yeah.
I think I would like to mention here about the reforms that you have mentioned, that in China in the 50s, the society was completely transformed and arranged marriages were banned. The women were asked to abuse their in-laws. Transformation has happened in the 50s. And the status of women, concubines were banned. the status of women has completely changed. What you're saying, atrocities which are sort of imposed on the women, all those were completely erased in a short span of 10 years in China. And the success of China today, they say, analysts, this is a book written by Harvard authors, is entirely based on the reforms which were done on educating the women and removing the atrocities and on them.
I will take that with a pinch of salt.
I will give you the
I will
Harvard
take
book
that with a pinch of salt because China, you have to study the entire political economy. You have to understand the entire social structure and what lies beneath. I think we are not much aware of that. We don't have the we don't have those realities coming out. So, but of course, while I say that, I appreciate the intervention of the state. We are also, our state is also intervening, but India, by its, India is inherently, democratic. Inherently, you believe in, convincing people, and then trying to strike out a consensus, spreading public awareness. The state thrusting it upon the people in such a straitjacket manner, I will definitely take that with a pinch of salt. I believe there can be better ways to, resolve this. The time, the time taken for this may be a little longer, but I think let us arrive arrive there well. So I will not go deeper into that. I will not go deeper into that. But realities, I think you have to understand the reality. You have to be in the knowledge of what is happening at the ground level to be so appreciative and eulogizing. I think the China there.
All right. So no, we are not going.
One last. I gave my spot to her.
No. I know. No, I'm just responding to the gentleman there that we don't have to go to the east right now. Yes, because then we have to address cultural revolution.
Yeah.
And then that's,
And then we have to
India is a
communism
very
also.
strong patriarchal society.
So,
And but this patriarchy and what Mukul has been trying to tell us really implies that there is no liberty of women unless we enter a phase of post-patriarchy. Till then, that is in the next 1,000 years, I don't see much happening. The rest are all tokenisms. All achievers are tokens. But the mass is still where they were, from the Vedas to the present.
that's true.
And the question, keep the question brief and the answer
I
telegram.
follow KISS. Keep it short and simple.
Yeah. And your answer also should be like a,
Absolutely.
yeah, like
the goal
a
of
X or something.
financial independency, which the women are enjoying more. Don't you think nowadays they are earning on their own? The economic, financial independence, what they are having. I can see it with my own daughters. So doesn't that give them that leveraging? So how do you, after your analysis of the Vedas and all these books, how do you put into that?
Absolutely, that goes without saying. Financial independence, is pivotal to the feminist discourse, not only in the current time but in the ancient times also. Why I have eulogized or I have admired Kama Sutra, because there the household, woman, the wife was supposed to have an absolute control over the household economy. So it was, and let me tell you, it was not something which was permitted by man. It was built into the structure of society, because when the husband left the household, so that concept of absentee householder making the provisions for the wife was not there in Kama Sutra. Wife was all independent, as if the man is not there, she is still the same. If man is there, she would keep performing the way she has been performing, her duties. So financial independence, but of course, and earning money. Then again, that will take us into the domain of monetization of the domestic labor. That is at the crux center of the modern feminist discourse. how we should monetize and how the domestic labor performed by men, that should be accorded more dignity. So I think you are very right in saying, and ancient Indian literature also it was the same. It was the same.
And Virginia Woolf, as you know, if she doesn't earn, she doesn't have a room of her own. But a room of her own with the lock and the key with her. Yes. So, yes, now I think it is time to wrap up. Already we are running late by 10 minutes. It's so fascinating. And with so many women, how can you get away from them? So,
Yeah. Thank you both. That was indeed very fascinating, very informative, and I think we are taking home a lot to ponder over. So on behalf of Prabha Khaitan Foundation and Taj Bengal, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to both Mukul Kumar and Sanjukta Dasgupta for steering us through this absolutely fascinating conversation.
thank you.
I thank our associates, Taj Bengal, for hosting us in this beautiful venue. And of course, thank you to our wonderful audience, as always, for being so participative and interactive. As you'll all know, that the foundation promotes an appreciation for local craftsmanship to honor our artistic and cultural legacy. So today we are honored to gift our guests with some Dokra artifacts. Dokra, as you know, is a non-ferrous metal. It's beautifully molded by artisans to craft artifacts, accessories, utensils, jewelry. And it derives its name from the Dokra Damar tribe of West Bengal, and it's made in this state. So could I now request Aparna Banerjee Paul of Taj Bengal to kindly come up, join us and felicitate our guests. Good night, goodbye all of you, and before you leave, please take a copy of the books as always, and I'm sure the author will be happy to sign.
Ma'am,